Three NBA legends sit in a diner: Samuel L. Jackson, Magic Johnson, Charles Barkley. Three of the most recognizable faces in American entertainment history, sharing a booth, selling credit cards, doing what they've always done, owning every room they walk into. And then she walks in, a WNBA player, someone who, just 2 years ago, was still playing college basketball. And within 60 seconds of stepping on set, she has stolen every single scene from all three of them simultaneously. The behind-the-scenes footage from Caitlin Clark's Capital One commercial is doing something the internet rarely does anymore. It's uniting everyone: basketball fans, skeptics, casual viewers who have never watched a single WNBA game in their lives. They are all saying the same thing: she belongs there. She more than belongs there. She runs the room. This is not a feel-good story about a rising star getting a shot. This is a coronation. And the timing of it, coming directly off a $28 million Nike endorsement deal, a 239-day injury layoff, and a WNBA debut that shattered every viewership record the league had ever registered, makes this one of the most significant commercial moments women's sports has ever produced. Let's connect every dot on exactly what happened, why it detonated across the internet the way it did, and what it tells us about where Caitlin Clark's career is actually going from here. If you've been watching this story unfold, and you already understand why this commercial moment is bigger than most people are willing to admit out loud, hit that like button right now. It helps us get this kind of analysis in front of the people who actually want to understand what's happening at the highest level of this conversation. The Capital One March Madness campaign has been running for years. Magic Johnson, Charles Barkley, Larry Bird, Spike Lee, these are not rotating guest appearances. They are the franchise. They represent the gold standard of sports advertising, a series so well established and culturally embedded that simply being invited into it functions as a career landmark. When brands operating at this scale bring someone into their flagship campaign, that decision does not happen in a creative brainstorm. Marketing teams study audience data, map commercial reach, model conversion rates, and greenlight an addition only when the numbers make refusing her impossible. Capital One looked at Caitlin Clark's audience demographics, looked at what she brings to March Madness specifically, and determined that she belonged inside one of the most recognizable advertising universes in sports history. That decision alone, before a single frame of footage was shot, tells you exactly how she is being valued in boardrooms right now. But here is where this goes deeper than the polished 30-second final cut. Caitlin Clark had never met any of them before walking onto that set. Not Magic, not Barkley, not Samuel L. Jackson, none of them. This was her first time in the same room with all three simultaneously, and yet, within minutes of arriving, she was flicking scoops of pistachio ice cream onto Magic Johnson's sundae with pinpoint precision, sending a burger bun sailing across the diner on a perfect arc, and trading comedic timing with Charles Barkley like they had been doing sketch work together for a decade. The behind-the-scenes footage shows Magic Johnson, a man who has shared sets and rooms and commercial shoots with Larry Bird, Shaquille O'Neal, and Michael Jordan. Watching her perform and grinning in a way that is unmistakably genuine, he was visibly lit up, not managing enthusiasm for the camera, actually excited. That response matters in a specific way. Magic Johnson is not a performer who gets caught off guard. He has been operating inside the entertainment ecosystem for 4 decades. He has worked alongside legends. He has hosted his own television shows. He has built business empires. He knows exactly what chemistry looks like when it's real, and he knows exactly what star power feels like when it's manufactured. And he recognized something real in someone he had just met for the first time. Now look at what Caitlin Clark actually did inside that commercial, because the specific details reveal something about her that statistics and highlight reels cannot fully communicate. She enters the diner scene the way she steps into an arena, smooth, unhurried, completely unbothered by the magnitude of the moment. Her entrance is the comedic pivot that reframes the entire advertisement. And then the trick shots start. The burger bun that finds its target, the precision scoop that lands exactly where she intended it. Her aim is not a production trick. Her timing is not scripted convenience. And her reaction to Barkley's theatrical protest, that completely unbothered smirk, is not something you can coach into someone on a first shoot. The crew is laughing between takes. People are clapping after her setups. One crew member, caught on the behind-the-scenes footage, says she's a superstar even when the cameras are not rolling, and adds that that's rare, really rare. Charles Barkley's praise carries a specific credibility that is easy to underestimate if you do not know his media history. He built an entire career on saying what others refuse to say, on pushing back against conventional narratives, on holding athletes and organizations and the entire sports industrial complex to a standard that doesn't bend for popularity. He has called out franchises, questioned Hall of Fame coaches, and made enemies throughout the industry by simply telling the truth as he sees it. When Charles Barkley, off-camera, unprompted, repeatedly tells people that someone is the real deal, that they belong, that is not a performance. He has no commercial reason to perform enthusiasm for the crew between takes. He means it. The commercial itself is embedded inside the 2026 Battle of the Blimps campaign, the ongoing rivalry between Magic's Magic Mart and Barkley's Chuck Stop that Capital One has been building into a full sports entertainment universe over multiple years. This is an established narrative world with its own internal logic, its own characters, its own audience expectations. Bringing Caitlin Clark into this ecosystem was not simply a casting decision. It was a structural statement about who she is in the current commercial landscape. The commercial does not position her as a guest. It positions her as someone who walks into an already established universe and immediately becomes its most interesting element. That is not an accident of chemistry. That is intentional creative direction by people who understood exactly what she would bring. Magic's description of her as a triple threat, delivered the moment she arrived on set, deserves a closer reading than it typically gets. Because Magic Johnson does not reach for sports cliches, he reaches for precision. And when he describes someone as a triple threat in the context of this campaign, he is situating her inside a specific commercial legacy that he helped create. In the 1980s, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird did not just play basketball brilliantly. They sold basketball to an America that was not entirely sure it wanted it. They dragged the NBA into prime time, into mainstream cultural conversation, into advertising boardrooms where the league had previously been told it did not belong. Their rivalry and their commercial presence built an infrastructure for the NBA that the league continues to benefit from 4 decades later. Magic Johnson knows precisely what it looks like when one athlete changes the entire commercial trajectory of a sport. He has the first-hand experience of having done it. And he is now saying, on camera, that he sees that same process beginning in Caitlin Clark. That is not flattery. That is a specific first-hand account from the most credible possible source. The numbers that surround her right now do not just support this narrative, they reframe it entirely. Her jersey sales in her rookie season topped 50,000 units, breaking every previous WNBA record in the process. Some of her games registered more than 1.2 million live viewers, the highest figures the league had ever produced. Arena attendance across multiple cities increased by more than 25% in markets where her schedule put her on opposing floors. She returned from a 239-day injury absence and slid back into a national commercial conversation that had refused to slow down even while she was away. The Capital One campaign launched at almost the exact moment of her return, landing simultaneously with the announcement of a $28 million Nike endorsement deal that is the largest in WNBA history by a considerable margin. These are not coincidences of timing. They are the architecture of a brand that has developed enough gravitational pull to move on its own momentum. There's a question that gets asked in sports marketing boardrooms every few years, and it almost never has a clean answer. When does an athlete stop being famous for their sport and start being famous for who they are? It is a rare threshold to cross. Michael Jordan crossed it, LeBron James crossed it, Serena Williams crossed it. On the women's side of the commercial ledger, the list has historically been much shorter and harder to build, But Caitlin Clark just crossed it, not because of the commercial itself, but because of how she performed inside it. The commercial is evidence. The crossing happened before the cameras started rolling. Drop a comment right now and tell us, do you think Caitlin Clark's crossover into mainstream entertainment is ultimately good for the WNBA as a whole league, or does the level of individual attention she generates create structural pressures that could become complicated? I want your honest read on this, because the conversation in the comments every time we cover her brand has been genuinely worth reading. What makes the behind-the-scenes footage culturally significant is not what happens in the final polished cut. It is what the unscripted moments reveal about power dynamics on that set. Magic Johnson, a personality who has filled every room he has ever entered for the better part of 40 years, was visibly adjusting to her energy rather than dominating it. Not out of politeness, not for the camera, out of genuine recognition of what she was bringing. When someone with his entertainment resume naturally recalibrates his own presence to accommodate another person's rhythm, that is an involuntary signal. It means he recognized something he was not expecting. Barkley's repeated off-camera praise reinforces the same conclusion. These men have been performing professionally across sports, television, and advertising for decades. They know exactly how to manufacture enthusiasm they do not feel. What they showed on that set was not manufactured. The commercial is also arriving at a specific inflection point for women's sports that extends well beyond Caitlin Clark's individual brand. WNBA television deals have been renegotiated upward, with broadcast partners paying serious attention to the viewership numbers that Clark's arrival generated. The league's ongoing collective bargaining landscape is directly shaped by revenue arguments that her commercial profile strengthens every single time a deal of this scale is announced. When a player's individual endorsement market can be cited in contract negotiations as a direct reason why league revenues are growing, that player's deals create financial ripple effects that move through the entire roster. The $28 million Nike agreement is not simply personal financial news for one athlete. It is a market signal to every brand, every broadcaster, and every sponsor with money allocated to women's sports, telling them exactly what Caitlin Clark is worth in a commercial context. And that number recalibrates the entire conversation about what the WNBA itself is worth. Consider the specific platform Capital One chose to deploy her on. Not a WNBA season opener campaign, not a women's basketball awareness initiative designed to grow a niche audience. March Madness, the most watched college basketball event in American sports, a cultural institution that generates billions of dollars in advertising revenue every single year and commands the kind of attention that brands compete fiercely to access. Capital One put Caitlin Clark inside the biggest basketball advertising moment on the calendar, alongside the men who have historically owned that space without competition. That placement decision was made because she generates the kind of attention that justifies the investment, not because she's a woman, not because of her sport, because she sells. If this is the kind of analysis that keeps you coming back, consider joining the channel as a member. Your support is exactly what makes it possible for us to keep digging into these stories at this level of depth. Charles Barkley's history with Caitlin Clark adds a layer to what happened on that set that the commercial coverage largely glosses over. From the moment she entered the WNBA, Barkley was vocal in her defense in ways that made television executives visibly uncomfortable. He called out cheap shots, named the pettiness directly, and made the economic argument loudly and on national television that the money and attention she was generating for the league should produce gratitude rather than resentment. He told players on live TV to stop being petty and recognize what she was bringing to the table financially. He was not diplomatic about it. He was specifically Barkley about it. His praise on the Capital One set was not disconnected from that 2-year history of public advocacy. It was continuous. He recognized something in her from the very beginning that this commercial simply confirmed on a completely different stage. Magic Johnson's comparison between Caitlin Clark and what he and Larry Bird did for the NBA in the 1980s is worth sitting with longer than most coverage allows. Magic and Bird did not just elevate basketball's playing level, they transformed the NBA's entire commercial relationship with American mainstream culture. Their Converse advertisements, their rivalry-based branding, their media presence, all of it built an advertising infrastructure for the league that had not previously existed and that the NBA continues to leverage today. Their rivalry gave brands a story to sell, gave broadcasters ratings they could take to sponsors, gave the league a narrative that converted casual sports fans into committed NBA consumers. When Magic Johnson looks at Caitlin Clark and draws that specific comparison, he is not assessing her jump shot. He is saying she is doing for the WNBA what he and Bird did for the NBA, constructing a commercial foundation under a league that needed one. That is an economic and cultural statement of the highest possible seriousness, delivered by the one person alive with the first-hand experience to make it. If this analysis is reaching you in a way that other coverage isn't, share this video with someone who follows Caitlin Clark's story. The more people who understand the full structural picture of what is happening here, the better the conversation becomes. The Internet's response to this commercial deserves its own analysis because of who specifically was responding. The most striking pattern in the social media reaction was not her existing fan base amplifying an already favorable narrative. It was the number of people reporting that this commercial was the moment they understood Caitlin Clark's appeal for the first time. People who follow Magic Johnson and Barkley on social media but had never watched a WNBA game. Casual viewers who encountered the footage without any prior investment in her story. Non-sports fans who found the behind-the-scenes clip through general entertainment channels. These people went online and said the same thing. She walked into a room full of legends and became the story. That pattern, converting people who had no prior reason to care, is the precise kind of audience expansion that advertising campaigns budget enormous sums to achieve, and it happened organically, through the footage itself, without any paid amplification. There is also something specific about her comedic instincts on set that reveals a talent entirely separate from basketball. Caitlin Clark's athletic reputation is built on precision, competitive aggression, and the willingness to take the high-pressure shot in front of the largest possible audience. On the Capital One set, she applied those exact same instincts to comedy. Her timing is tight. Her reactions are immediate. She commits to a joke without waiting for confirmation that it landed, then moves directly to the next beat. That is the kind of comedic sensibility that cannot be trained into someone between takes, and it cannot be scripted into an outcome. The fact that she arrived on a set for the first time, encountered three of the most formidable personalities in American entertainment simultaneously, and found her comedic rhythm with all three of them within minutes. That is a specific talent that belongs entirely to her, separate from any athletic ability, and it is exactly the talent that converts an elite athlete into a crossover cultural icon. The 239-day injury absence she returned from adds the most revealing dimension to this entire sequence of events. While she was away, the conversation around her did not cool. Her merchandise continued to sell. The league's viewership trajectory remained anchored to the question of her return. Brands maintained their relationships, and it current, in Nike's case, escalated them dramatically. Her absence was, in effect, an unplanned test of something that very few athletes ever get to find out about themselves, whether their cultural presence depends on their playing, or whether it has developed an independent gravitational pull that exists outside the game entirely. The answer arrived in real time over 239 days. She did not need to play a single minute of basketball for her brand to grow. She came back to the largest endorsement deal in WNBA history, a national campaign with NBA royalty, and an internet that had not moved on. That is not momentum, that is gravity. And it only intensifies from here. The WNBA season is coming. The Indiana Fever have built their roster and their entire commercial narrative around a player who is now a confirmed mainstream entertainment figure, not a basketball prospect with crossover potential, but a crossover reality who also plays basketball at an elite level. The questions going forward are not about whether she belongs at the top of the league's commercial hierarchy. That conversation is over. The questions are about what happens when her full competitive attention returns to the court, when the narrative analysts and the newly converted casual fans and the advertising boardrooms are all watching at the same moment, and she shows them something they have not seen yet. The Capital One commercial was not the peak of this story. It was the confirmation. Legend status is not waiting for her at the end of a long career. It started already, in a diner, surrounded by Magic and Barkley and Samuel L. Jackson, while she smirked at the camera and acted like she had always belonged exactly there. If you believe this story is only getting started, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell so you do not miss what we cover next. Because with the WNBA season approaching and Caitlin Clark returning fully healthy, the next chapter of this story is going to move fast. We will be right here breaking it down for you. See you in the next one.